If somebody comes to me at 500, it's totally possible to bring them up to that 800, in my opinion, relatively quickly within 12 months. Some people are willing to make those sacrifices and others just are not.
Welcome to the Rebel Health Coach Podcast with Tom Underwood. Armed with truth and knowledge, your journey to a healthy lifestyle can be obtained. Preventative wellness, quality nourishment, and daily fitness routines dramatically improve your outlook on life as a whole. And you'll find the support and info you need to accomplish a healthier lifestyle here. Together, we can empower each other along our journey to an amazing you.
Today's guest on the Rebel Health Coach podcast is Tony Llabres. Tony Llabres, welcome to the Rebel Health Coach podcast.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Now, I'm glad you're here. Today, Tony, we are going to tackle why your manhood is slowly seeping away. For all you out there, for all those men out there that are wondering where their testosterone levels are going, we are going to touch base on this for you. Tony, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Okay. The website is fdnoflorida.com. I had a 30-year career in aviation as an air traffic controller and been involved in the fitness and health industry, since I was about 13 or 14 years old. I remember buying my first set of Joe Weider barbells back in the 1970s when Arnold was the thing, and I just saw all the magazines with the fella on the beach and kicking sand in someone's face. And along came Arnold down the beach, and I got fascinated with working out. And then that turned into a desire to find more out, learn more about physiology, anatomy, how the body works, what we knew in science, nutrition. That's kind of been the last probably, almost 35, almost 40 years now. 10 years before I retired, I really was trying to find a niche. I had a degree in biology and I wanted to pursue more education. I just didn't know where I fit in the system. The allopathic medical system really didn't speak to me. It was a mess, and it still is a mess in my opinion. So, but at the time, like I said, 10 to 12 years ago, I really didn't know where I'd fit. Holistic, there wasn't the programs that are available now in functional medicine. So I just started self-learning. I started reading books. I started reading naturopathic journals. I started reading studies. And then I had my own venture with low T in my late 30s. So I speak from a personal experience and knowing what that feels like and being very sympathetic to the cause. And fast forward through 7 or 8 different certifications through functional medicine training courses, I feel that this was kind of where I need to be. This is a place where men need us. Not that I don't take female clients, but men are pretty lost out there, and we're the last ones to speak about our health. I mean, we just keep going on day by day, pushing forward, going to work, coming home, feeling tired, knowing something's wrong. You just can't put your finger on it. This timing for your podcast was perfect for me. I mean, it was something that I've been preaching verbally and through websites continuously. So I'm glad that I received the call to do this with you.
I'm glad you're here. Your certifications are many. I'll post these on the website, but certified for the Kalish Institute of Functional Medicine, certified functional diagnostics nutrition practitioner through FDN, a certified functional medicine blood lab analysis through Quest and LabCorp. And also you have the level 1 certified through the School of Applied Functional Medicine. And you also went to Functional Medicine University.
Yeah.
And Kresser Institute of Functional Medicine. Those are quite kind of the path that I've been looking at. But right now I just kind of stopped with the School of Applied Functional Medicine up until maybe 2017 or 18. I mean, but anyway, let's get to the subject of low testosterone. Why our manhood is slowly seeping away as we age. What are some of the symptoms that come from low testosterone levels?
Well, I think, like I said, experiencing it myself in my late 30s, one of the things that becomes readily apparent is you've made no changes in your lifestyle. Nothing's really changed. You haven't drank more, drank less. You haven't slept more, slept less. You haven't worked harder. You haven't worked less. everything seems to be the same, but you start feeling off. You start noticing abdominal fat. You start noticing unusual fatigue. You start noticing the erectile dysfunction is a common symptom. The drive for sex, which is multifaceted, the drive issue we can talk about as well. The loss of hair, the whole change, the shift in the man's body, what's happening with your body. But men aren't as in tune, in my opinion, as women are. Women are, they notice the small things, the nuances that with their body, and they're more attentive. As we're men, I just don't feel we're as in tune. Not all of us, but I don't feel we're as in tune. Now one of my goals with my clients is to actually get them to listen to their body is a huge goal. I mean, if they can just listen when you're dehydrated, listen when you're undernourished, listen when you're fatigued and you're not sleeping well. If they listen to their body, then they can formulate a plan so they can also self-diagnose and know what that feels like should it happen again. Those, if you speaking of symptoms, when you talk about gynecomastia, I'm dealing with a client right now, and the alarming thing that I'm seeing with low T is I'm seeing it younger and younger. That's a very sad statement. Some people call it the estrogenification of our male society, because they're actually, the estrogen levels are creeping up due to multifaceted many reasons. But I'm seeing it. I just ran a 28-year-old's labs the other day, and a testosterone level of 290 is just unacceptable. Yeah, it's unacceptable. So, but that's what I'm seeing. That is the norm now. The norm for people, and this is somebody who doesn't drink, doesn't smoke. So the next thing you'd ask yourself, well, appearance-wise, how do they present? Are they? Do you see breast tissue? Do you see, are they overweight in the abdominal area? What's the diet look like? So this person just happened to be asthmatic and is on, several inhalers, and, GI dysfunction, those type of things that would disturb any type of hormonal axis. I would say that those two right there would definitely be players in his low T. So I would beg families to look at their children, and even younger children. Like, if you start to see a 14 or 15-year-old developing breast tissue, if you start to see that real malaise, that fogginess, please get their hormones checked. Test your children's hormones. I know they're developing, and there are some dynamics that are different in younger males. But if you start to see any of these, and you have an inactive child that's not exercising, you know that the insulin resistance is probably developing at a very young age. So I would say that we need to pay attention to what's happening to our young men at a much younger age.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, I think I attribute a lot of it to the food that we eat, especially as the younger generation today eats a lot of fast food and stuff that's causes high insulin levels. It's sad because, I mean, more and more people, and children including, are becoming insulin resistant. We're missing the boat, I feel. So,
yeah, and I haven't dismissed the fact, although I can't tie it directly to a cause of low T, I haven't dismissed, and it's always sitting in the back of my head, the over-vaccination protocols of our children. You can't tell me with these vaccination protocols that there isn't something happening at the hypothalamus pituitary axis level with all these vaccines. I mean, the vaccine protocols nowadays are absolutely out of control. I don't think some people understand how vaccinated our children are nowadays.
Exactly.
I'm in my mid-50s, so think of what vaccinations we had as back in our younger days. Now I talk to people with young children, and I mean, they have over 30 vaccines by the time they're 4. I mean, which is ridiculous.
Well, you were in the military too, and I know from going through military or being in the military, the first thing they do in boot camp is shoot you up with a bunch of vaccines.
Sure. And
we don't know, and nobody really knows. I know there's a lot of studies out there, and I won't take a vaccination now to save my soul. Even like a TB shot, I just turn it down. I'm like, no, I'll take the chances.
Yeah, no, I don't, and again, there's a lot of research out there. The vaccines of our day had probably just some really, really bad add-ons and, into those concoctions that they were shooting into us. And I don't trust them either, to be very honest with you. I mean, I don't get a flu shot. I just read yesterday that they're coming out in a few months with one flu shot for your lifetime.
Yeah.
So basically, you'll have one flu shot. That's
I'll pass.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on that as well. So it's just if I don't know what's in it, if there's not enough research, I don't want to be the guinea pig to find out 10 years from now that I'm not going to be able to see, I'm not going to be able to hear, I'm not going to have any hormones in my body. I'm just not going to be that guinea pig for them. Now, let me ask you, what causes low T? Yeah, I think that's also a multifaceted. I mean, we could talk probably for days on it. I'm a firm believer in the high insulin theory, the continuous levels of insulin degrading the cardiovascular system. So, I mean, our bodies can handle, probably when you're younger, you wonder, well, how can a person eat all of this sugar? If you're active and you're draining the tank of glycogen, then I would say you'll be more responsive. You'll be able to manage more sugar intake, more carbohydrate intake. As you age and we get into a professional lifestyle and we're sitting at desks and we're on phones and we're not nearly as active as we were as children, or at least my childhood was very active. We didn't have Nintendos and, my parents could never find us. I mean, we were 3 blocks away playing hockey or basketball or football or baseball in the playground. So we didn't have video games. Nowadays, with the sedentary lifestyle of children, I think that's another player of them. They're not able to empty that glycogen tank. Then you have all this excess sugar in the bloodstream. Insulin levels are continuously high, trying to bring that glucose out of the bloodstream because it is damaging to the body. I think that's a huge player. Estrogen mimickers, all the toxins between water and poor quality of food. And then to boot, not being able to detox the estrogen that's in the body. So if it's recirculating and constantly building up at levels that are intolerable to the body, then you can expect negative repercussions. Yep. And feminizing products that we have today, Axe, deodorants, all of, sure. And we're drinking out of bottled, we're drinking out of plastic water bottles all the time. Sure. There's too many layers. And I think when I talk to my clients, we start at the very basic levels. We talk about water. We talk about what they're putting on their skin. We talk about the quality of the food they're purchasing. We look at their diet from a micronutrient, macronutrient profile. So we actually put it in a simple program, a free program like the MyFitnessPal or Chronometer online. They're all free. You can put in that diet and you can look all the way down the line. What's their micronutrient profile on a daily basis and what's their macronutrient profile? Exactly. You'll see the deficiencies. Just in the recommended daily, the RDI information, you're going to see it clearly that if they don't even meet the RDI and micronutrients, then there's a problem. You need to change the diet. Yep, exactly. But I think once that process starts, if there's no intervention, I think the estrogen levels just take over. You're going to have elevated prolactin, elevated steroid hormone binding globulin, SHBG, elevated estrogen levels. And when there's nothing to combat that and nothing to stop it, then the testosterone levels of the body are going to be bound, ineffective, and estrogen is going to take over. So let's talk about that. Let's dig into that part. What are optimal ranges of testosterone levels and how low is too low? Very, very individual. So when we talk about let's find out where the clients started. Where are they? They all come to us in different phases. They all come to us with they present different symptoms. They present where the point at which they come to you initially is very different from, say, the last 50 clients that you dealt with. So once you get those baseline labs and you correlate with all of the symptoms and the complaints they have, if I do look at a testosterone level, say mostly anything below 600, I would say is just absolutely something that needs attention. But I also know people that are say in the 700 to 800 range, that if you take them up to 1200, they won't be happy. So for me, because I was on hormone replacement therapy, that if you were to take a fellow like me, when I tested, I was 254 nanograms per deciliter. And I was able, through exogenous testosterone cypionate, to actually take my levels to different levels. I've gone from 800 up to 1200. I'm that guy that doesn't feel good at 1200. I don't like the way I feel. I don't feel. I feel like there's something wrong. My innate sense tells me that is too high for me. So, and then you need estrogen control, and even if you're detoxing estrogen well, if you're putting that much testosterone in your body to take, and for some people it might only be 200 nanogram or 200 the shot of 200 milligrams over every 7 to 10 days would take somebody up to 1200. As where some people, based on what their metabolic efficiency is, they would take a 200 milligram shot and only get them up to 800. So it's something that if you're going to introduce exogenous testosterone to somebody, that's extremely low. Like, I'll give you an example. If you came to me as a client and you were at 250 and you said you had all the symptoms, everything was just clearly the deficiency of testosterone. And I could say, okay, Tom, well, let's work together for a year, because this didn't happen overnight. There's a lot of things that need to change. Diet, exercise, you name it, supplementation, lifestyle changes, all the toxic load has to be removed. All the dysfunctions in the body, we have to address those things. So if we work conservatively together for a year, perhaps we can get your testosterone to 500. We say we double your testosterone. I can pretty much guarantee you, based on all my clinical experience, that 500 is not going to make Tom happy.
No.
It's just not going to be enough. So the question then becomes, okay, many clients will say, I'm not willing to do 12 months to get 100% increase to go to 500. And if they want to go on exogenous testosterone, then obviously I have to I have a competent clinic that I refer to. But if somebody comes to me at 500, it's totally possible to bring them up to that 800, in my opinion, relatively quickly within 12 months. Some people are willing to make those sacrifices and others just are not. So very individual. Like I said, I can come in at 800, which is my sweet spot, which is where I like to be. And I don't like to be anything below that. And I certainly, that 8 to 850 range is perfect for me. I feel good. I feel healthy. I feel strong, vibrant, and intellectually sharp. If I'm at 1100, 1200 on my T levels, I don't feel well. Something's wrong.
All right. I agree with that. I've been up that 1200 mark and I don't like it.
Yeah.
I just don't like the feeling of it. 800 is about perfect.
Yeah, that's what we find. The literature is pretty clear in that range too. I think that 800 to 900 range where people are really happy. And there's many ways to do it. You're going to see a depressed DHEA level in people. So when you run their labs, they're Dutch, or you just run DHEA sulfate, you're going to see a depressed level. So that's something that you can address with DHEA supplementation as long as you're managing the estrogen load. You don't want to put DHEA into somebody who's not detoxing estrogen. So, and I think I've seen people take 100 milligram micronized units, 100 milligrams of DHEA, and then you pull their labs. This is without knowing, and you pull their lab, and they say, "Yeah, I'm taking DHEA. I feel a little bit better, but I really don't feel perfect." And then you get back in their estrogen level. Estrogen I like to keep between 20 and 30 PGs per ml, and some people come in at 60 or 70. And it's a wonder why you're not feeling well. All this estrogen flowing through your veins.
Let's talk about some of the total testosterone, free testosterone, sex hormone binding globulin, like SHPG, I should say, also. And let's talk about that and how does our body produce testosterone?
Well, it's a feedback loop from the hypothalamus to pituitary gland, the Leydig cells of your testes, and they're all communicating. And when there is the testosterone, about 95% of your testosterone production is via your testes through the Leydig cells. About another 5% you'll get through your adrenal glands. So as the body calls for testosterone, and normally you'll get a peak first thing in the morning about 9 a.m. That's when I get most of my clients. That I'd like them to test sometime between 8 and 10 in the morning.
Okay. So
that'll be your peak level for the day. And we get a real good capture of what their body's doing then. So this is just a feedback loop when the hypothalamus signals the gonadotropin releasing hormone through the pituitary. Then as it travels throughout the body and finally reaches the testes, it'll stimulate the luteinizing hormone, which in turn will stimulate the Leydig cells to actually produce testosterone. Testosterone will flow through the bloodstream. About 97 to 98% will be bound, protein bound. So while they consider it useless, I have seen studies that actually, kind of similar to cortisol, you'll see in certain target glands, you'll see cortisol, bound cortisone be free to free cortisol. So I believe we do see that with testosterone too. I'm not sure clearly on the mechanism, but for the most part, people look at 2 to 3% of the free testosterone, the unbound portion, being the usable amount of testosterone for target tissue and androgen receptor stimulation. Okay. So you'll see testosterone, which will be converted into DHT. Both can stimulate the androgen receptor, and we can talk a little bit more about DHT if you like. It's more androgenic than testosterone. So SHBG is a binding globulin that can bind multiple hormones. We look at the sex hormones most of the time, but it is a player when you look at thyroid as well. Thyroid binding globulins and the interplay has a similar effect. Glycoprotein binds to a hormone and shuttles the hormone throughout the body. High levels of SHBG will bind testosterone. So when we always, as part of my male panel, will always be a prolactin draw and an SHBG draw. If somebody has gynecomastia, prolactin more often than not is quite elevated. If the SHBG is elevated, then we can use products to reduce the binding, which will at the same time allow testosterone to raise. So there are many ways to approach it. If you have a normal prolactin and normal SHBG, then we look at other ways. If they're normal, we look at other reasons why, whether the person is primary hypogonadal or secondary, in other words, is it a pituitary feedback loop issue, or is it a testicular issue where the problem is in the testicles? Maybe we have a blockage. Maybe we have some type of Klinefelter. There's a chromosomal anomaly happening. Maybe the testicles didn't descend. Hemochromatosis. Maybe you've gotten injured. Maybe a sports injury. Actually, I've seen many studies on sports injuries to the groin. So, and that could be another player. So those are all things to think about. Whether you can use a urologist or an allopathic practitioner to diagnose those pituitary tumors, et cetera.
Let's take this to the next level. Where did we start to change this? The book that you sent me to read, or that you recommended I read, has a great little pyramid that I liked. But first of all, the micronutrients are the base of this pyramid. So let's talk about what we do to up our ante and up our testosterone and get some of our life back and stop it from seeping away.
Sure. Well, like I said, a simple way to start is to take a person's diet and put it into one of the programs that I mentioned. There's another one by Marty Kendall. It's called the Nutrient Optimiser. It's a fee for service. It's very inexpensive. Marty has really put together quite a program that assesses nutrient requirements versus nutrient intake. And he has quite a few PhDs that are part of his, that have already tried his optimizer, and they kind of compete with each other. They put their diets in, and so you have these PhD level people actually putting their nutrients in there to see who really is maximizing the most bang for their buck nutrient wise and as far as food intake. So I think I've used that service a couple of times, and I really do recommend it. But if you're just going to use a simple template like Chronometer, it's going to use the daily RDIs, and we want to see exactly where the deficiencies lie. And then we want to correlate those deficiencies if we're strictly addressing testosterone. I'm not talking about other ancillary problems. Nothing works in isolation, but if we're just for the discussion, I'm going to look for zinc levels. I'm going to look for magnesium levels. I'm going to look for the red blood cell values. I'm going to look at the aromatase pathways, the detox pathways. All these things put together give me the picture of how I'm going to address my client. Vitamin D3 levels. Are they getting boron in their diet? If they're getting zinc, how much zinc and What kinds of zinc are they taking in? Is it through food or supplementation? Obviously, magnesium is a huge player. I'm going to look at iodine, choline. I'm going to look at their electrolyte balances. If they're salt, which many people don't know, but salt is a great vasodilator. So when I talk sea salts, like Celtic sea salts, the pink sea salts that people use, not that I want to knock those. I prefer the Redmonds based on the book, the Salt Fix.
Okay.
Because I think the research, that's probably the most in-depth research I've seen on sodium ever, because I think the fellow that wrote that, he was actually a pharmacist, actually put 10 years of research into that. So sodium is actually a vasorelaxer. So somebody who has cardiovascular problems, as long as there's no kidney disease indicated, I would up their salt intake as I would up their potassium intake. So I'm very particular when I look at labs and I look at total intake of sodium versus potassium. I recommend normally, certainly as a minimum, with the 2,500 milligrams of sodium and 5,000 milligrams of potassium, but I like to go much higher.
Okay.
So at potassium, I'm up around 7,000 to 8,000, and I'm a minimum of 5 grams of a quality salt daily in your diet. So we wake up with salt for the adrenal glands to help your adrenal glands that work in this axis, because cortisol is catabolic, testosterone is muscle building, and cortisol is muscle breaking. So if you look at catabolism versus anabolism, they oppose each other. So we know that if we have healthy adrenal glands, all of the hormones and glucocorticoids and mineralocorticoids that are produced by the adrenal glands, it's very important to have a good amount of sodium on board. So I'm very much in that camp to get a good. I choose the book's recommendation, which is the Redmonds salt. It's no plastics, no toxins, which may not be screened out of a Celtic sea salt or Himalayan pink sea salt.
Okay.
The spectrum of iodine's higher. All these things play into your testosterone production. That I just wanted to accentuate that the electrolyte balance for me is really important. It helps you perform better. It keeps you awake. If you are a runner or a person who goes to the gym, and if you just try this one time and add about a half a teaspoon of salt to your morning regimen prior to your run or your workout, I would probably bet in a high percentage that your performance will increase dramatically.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I started adding the Redmonds to my water with a lime before my workouts.
Sure.
And I've noticed a great difference in my runs and my workouts. As I have a lot more stamina to go through the workout since I've done that.
Sure. And it's just like anything else, Tom. It's this balance. Magnesium without calcium, not a good thing.
Right.
It's this balance that we try to find. That's why people like you and I, we try and find that in our food. But the same head of broccoli that's grown, say, here in Florida, in Central Florida, versus the same head of broccoli that's grown in Oregon or Washington State has a totally different nutrient profile. So we can't be guaranteed by going to the chronometer that, it doesn't allow us to put where this vegetable was grown.
Right.
So I can't tell you exactly. This is a ballpark of what we're trying to do. So I wake up in the morning with a little baking soda and water. I go to bed with a little baking soda and water to raise those levels, help hydrochloric acid buffer it into duodenum. I just think it's just a helpful thing to do. I just keep an eye on my CO2 levels, watch your CBC panel, see if you need that at all. But I'm a firm believer in it. It helps buffer acid. So we're living in an acidic state. And when I see these labs, it's clearly they're very acidic and they need alkaline balance. So one of the quickest ways, when you're changing your diet and everything, is to just put a little bit of baking soda in the water in the morning and at night. And they do benefit from it, and you get pretty good feedback relatively quickly.
What are you using for baking soda?
I just use the Arm & Hammer baking soda. Okay. It's inexpensive. It's not polluted with toxins that I know of, and it's quite simple. I use a little buffered vitamin C with that sometimes too.
Okay.
So Another one that I look really closely at is vitamin A. If you look at the hormone pyramid and you look at the very top and you see coenzyme A, so you have an enzymatic vitamin A with an enzyme, vitamin B5, and then pregnenolone, and then those filter down into our hormones. So a lot of people get very little vitamin A. I would say we see most people that we see deficient in vitamin D for sure. Yeah. Office jobs under fluorescent lights. They don't use blue blockers at night. I'm a big fan of the circadian rhythm with hormones. So if somebody is not filtering out blue light after, say, 7 o'clock and getting to bed at a reasonable hour, you can expect some type of adrenal or hormone dysfunction. So I don't just isolate that to testosterone, although I do feel it's a player. Yeah. When you worked like I did in a dark radar room in your 30s and you didn't see the light of day sometimes for 36 hours, that's a big player in living in a dark environment, watching blue light hit your eyes, telling you it's daytime when you should be sleeping, and when you go home, it's dark out at night. You don't see the light of day. So that is a physical stress on the body. It presents a challenge for those midnight shift workers, nurses, and so on, being in that artificial light. And I think that's a huge player in all of our hormone axis. Talk about melatonin, talk about cortisol, all these play. If you're constantly elevated cortisol, then you're going to have depressed testosterone and DHEA.
To sign up for my monthly newsletter, text RHCP, that's Rebel Health Coach Podcast, or Red Hot Chili Peppers, to 22828. Again, that's RHCP to 22828. Thank you, and have an awesome day. So we talked about the micronutrients. Let's go into macros, which is basically what we feed our body.
Sure.
With all the diet fads out there, ketogenic, intermittent fasting, the basic diet of macronutrients. Diet protein or diet high protein?
Yeah, I tell you, it's very confusing, right? I've done pretty much just about almost any diet, protein spared, modified fasting. I've done 24-hour fasting. I've done the ketogenic diet. I've done the cyclic ketogenic diet. I've just eaten a moderate 1/3 macros, 1/3 carbs, 1/3 protein, 1/3 fats. I think what's most important in this whole picture is to have a minimum. Somebody tells me they can't go ketogenic, or the indication is that they're an effective carb burner, and you put them on a ketogenic diet, you're bound to fail.
Right.
If somebody is not getting fats, healthy fats that we know are valuable to the body for inflammation purposes, for hormone production, because after all, these all start with cholesterol. So if somebody is not going to support that cholesterol chain, then we're going to have to take some type of action to get those essential fats into their body. So in my personal opinion, a balanced approach would be, if you were just strictly talking testosterone, would be certainly meats with a moderate amount of saturated fats, some polyunsaturated fats through seeds, some essential fatty oils. So we want those essential fatty acids to support the hormone production, to support lowering triglycerides. We don't want an elevated triglyceride level. Certainly would want a certain amount of protein, but the access has to work properly. In other words, you can put all these nutrients in the body. If the nitrogen production is not optimal, if nitric oxide is not optimal, I think that's when we start to run into problems. I can tell you clearly that when I work with somebody who's a coach that's a nutrition coach, and they tell me, look, the ketogenic diet is not going to, we need to change that. And you change it up, maybe adding carbohydrates through tubers, through more fibrous vegetables, and you're not going to gain weight or fat. As a matter of fact, you may maintain the same weight, but you'll actually be leaner and more muscular. And then you try it and it works. You go, I would have never thought of that. So until you try it, until Tom tries the diet that's right for Tom, it's very difficult to say with any certainty of what is perfect. In other words, what is the right, take you where you are. Let's look, I could tell you to eat liver and you'll say, Tony, there is no way I'm going to eat liver. even though it's a valuable spectrum of nutrients, the protein, all the minerals, the B vitamins, the vitamin A, and you say, there is no way I'm going to touch that liver. So we have to come up with a different plan. So I would say optimally, and I'm not a nutritionist, but for me personally, I know at 220 pounds that my intake of protein daily, the more protein I get, the leaner I get. So when I want to get leaner, I have to take in more protein, which for me, it's a little bit difficult because I don't, red meat now, I've kind of cut back on red meat, more fish now. And I don't mind liver, so I could certainly have liver and onions from, good, well-raised animals. But I think we see this problem. I see this problem with female clients. Their protein intake is like maybe 30 grams a day.
Yeah, it's not
good. They wonder why their thyroid is not functioning right.
Exactly.
Or they don't eat carbs because they don't want to retain water because they don't want the extra weight, so they don't eat the carbohydrates. Well, if you eat the right carbohydrates and you eat them at the right time, then you most likely are not going to have this huge water retention problem, and you're going to upregulate your thyroid, which means you're going to be more metabolically active and thus lose more body fat. So we know that if I have several clients that are runners that exercise 7 days a week. Well, guess what their cortisol is doing? It's skyrocketing. And their cortisol levels, they're constantly in this state of breaking down tissue, and they're wondering why they can't get the right the right body composition. Well, because your other hormones are now at the behest of your cortisol environment. So you exercise not to failure. You don't exercise to exhaustion. You change the way you work out. The workout should be probably a little bit more ballistic. For men, I would speak mostly of men on this. You'd probably have a more ballistic. That's what the studies that I've read and over on Anabolic Man. I trust what they say because they're science backed. I mean, I also do my own research, but sure, ballistic movements. We don't want to exhaust ourselves. I'm not a marathon runner. I certainly wouldn't recommend that from a physiological standpoint. It's very dangerous to the body. I guess I went from nutrition into exercise, but they all come together. I mean, they all meet at some point. If you're not exercising, then you're not going to be moving that glycogen from the muscle tissue and from the liver and burning it up to make room for the next meal that's going to be broken down, and the carbohydrates are going to come in, and they want to fill the muscle glycogen, they want to fill the liver glycogen. Well, if that tank is full, where's it going to go? It's going to be shuttled right into your fat stores.
Right.
So that really is the ticket. I mean, if people understand I wish we had a gas gauge for glycogen storage in our body. If we just had a gauge on your chest and said, you're running low, Tom, now would be the perfect time to take in some carbohydrates because we're very low. And we can promise you that those carbohydrates will not go to fat. We're going to put them right into storage for future use as energy other than fat storage. That would be great. But can you imagine the person that doesn't, just think about it, the person that doesn't exercise, it's the person who doesn't do an arm curl or doesn't do maybe a chest exercise or doesn't move their abdominal area or doesn't move their legs. And that glycogen that sits in that tissue is not being burned or being burned at a very slow pace. So the more that they put in their body, the more alcohol they drink, the more carbohydrates they take in, the more goes to storage.
It's pretty sad.
Yeah, but it's something we can fix. It's something you can control. And part of what we do, and you know this just as well as I do, is to coach these people to get them. When we get a lot of these clients, some of them don't get off the couch.
Right.
Some don't move. So it's unrealistic to ask us or to ask them to get up and say, let's start a full-blown exercise program. But what we can do is we can start to correct all the minor dysfunctions, set a realistic goal, tell them this is where we'd like to be. I normally recommend like a trampoline, the small mini rebounders. Yeah. And I said, look, if you can sit on the couch, or if there's something, maybe your doctor, you get a good physical and you can just bounce on this thing. I'm not saying don't jump to the ceiling, just bounce on your rebounder while you're watching your favorite TV show for 5 or 10 minutes a day. And then maybe work out to two of those routines a day, maybe for 5 or 10 minutes. And then eventually we get them moving.
I never even thought about that trampoline.
Yeah, the little trampoline is a great tool. It's non-impact. There's little bars they can hold themselves up on. So if they're unstable, Obviously, get cleared from your physician
Right.
to make sure that there's no, there's no knee problems, ankle problems. But if they can walk, if they can physically get up and walk from the bedroom to the living room to the kitchen, then they could probably stand on this with a rail and just bounce, gently bounce. Let's move the lymph. Let's move the body. Let's let the body realize, okay, the body will respond positively to a light exercise like that for somebody who's not moving.
That's interesting. That's a good idea.
So,
all right, let's go into lifestyle, because lifestyle, especially in what we do, a lot of our clients are people who work a lot and are stressed, and they sleep very little. So, that to me, lifestyle is just as important as your food and your micronutrients as everything else.
Sure.
And sleep's a biggie for a lot of people. They don't get the fact that if you're not getting optimal rest, nothing's going on.
Sure.
Nothing good's going on, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think sleep is like one of the first things that we all address. We check when they do the health history, when we do our intakes, we're looking at, and we really have to be specific, because people unknowingly don't really report their sleep as being poor until you've had maybe the third or fourth conversation with them.
Right.
I sleep fine. You really have to be specific with your clients and drag this information out of them on some issues, and sleep is one of them. The other one is the GI distress and their bowel habits.
Right.
But yeah, for sleep, normally I look at a few things. For me, is to quantify A, how much, and B, truly, if there's a lot of heart rate variability monitors they can use now. There's sleep studies. There's all kinds of things. Let's figure out, what is the sleep disturbance? I have a 35-year-old son who owns a construction business in Toronto. He's very busy, high stress, high-paced environment, terrible sleeper. So when he came down to visit, I ran about $300 in labs on him. What we realized was, not only was he going through the metabolic syndrome, all the symptoms were classic. We had to address his sleep. It was one of the first things we had to do. In his scenario, it was, the liver wasn't operating the glucose shuttle very efficiently. So he had a few issues. His mind was racing. His glucose metabolism was basically waking him up. His adrenaline, he'd get an adrenaline surge at 2 or 3 in the morning, wake him up wide awake, and couldn't go back to sleep. So it's important for practitioners to have a few of those tools in your toolbox. I jokingly tell them I'm going to knock them out, because the sleep is so important. It's just so vital. So I address the blue light scenario, the circadian rhythm. We want to make sure that we're minimizing blue light after, say, 7 o'clock. Try and encourage them to get into bed by 10 if they're up by 5 or 6. Black out the room, get the room nice and cool. The pre-supplements the supplements that I'll have them do are based upon how they present. So if somebody has a sugar metabolism problem, then we're going to be addressing their sugar metabolism problem, but we're going to give them a little something, some type of food before bed. 15 grams of carbohydrates ought to do it. And this way they won't get that adrenaline surge. They won't get the cortisol upregulation, because the body's looking for sugar. They're going hypo at night and it's waking them up. So in order to combat that, some practitioners will use a combination of a protein and a fat if they're having sugar regulation problems. I have not had a negative experience with 15 grams of carbohydrates with any client. So what that simply means is a tablespoon of honey. If they take a nighttime tea with, some of the female clients are really tied into their herbal teas.
Right.
So they don't want to leave their teas. They love their teas. This is where, so we have them put a little bit of carbohydrate in their tea. Then if the cortisol from the Dutch test comes back and it's constant, it's elevated, then we're going to use the little phosphatidylserine. We're going to bring down their cortisol, and we're going to hopefully keep the adrenaline and the cortisol suppressed throughout the night. Additionally, a little L-theanine and magnesium. So you can use a combination of these, or you can isolate them and add in, based on how they present and what the labs show. And you should have a pretty good outcome. Using a little NAC, but for the liver will help to some with the racing mind. I use taurine as well, and sometimes tyrosine. The theanine seems to be a really nice modulator of that mechanism, so it seems to work really well. So that's how normally I address sleep. The other things that we address is light. If you can if you're in artificial light all day, I try and encourage them. We live in Southwest Florida. My son's here most of the time. I say, when you go out and take your work break, please get outside and try not to wear your sunglasses. Let the light hit your eyes. Right. And if I could have a prescription for everybody, it would be try and get that morning sun every bit. If you're going to have your tea or do your devotionals or do, whatever you do in the morning, get outside on your deck and let the sun hit your face without glasses on. Indirectly, if you have sensitive eyes. But we want to start that hormone mechanism operating properly. And I think you'll see too, for people that have weight problems, just something I've experienced with people and clients and talk and network with other practitioners, is the time restricted feeding. If they stop their feeding the food window at about 7 o'clock and say they go to bed by 10, most realize a beneficial weight loss, a body optimization. So if they start their feeding with a nice protein meal in the morning and then stop their feeding sometime at night, no later than 7 o'clock, if they're in bed by 10, they'll actually benefit nicely with a body composition. And as long as they haven't gone crazy throughout the day and been responsible with their eating plan, a benefit instead of grazing from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. before they go to bed. Yeah. Nighttime is down regulation. Your hormones are settling in for the night. It's really not time to start a whole digestive process.
I think I myself, and we're all, to your point about all us being different, my feeding window is about 8 hours and my fasting window is about 16. Mm-hmm. So, and that has really served me well over the last few months.
Yeah. Yeah. And intermittent fasting for testosterone, I've seen studies that actually are in favor of intermittent fasting. And that's fine. I mean, it's some people it works for and some people it doesn't. Some people it creates a stress that we don't want to stress that person at this time.
Right.
So
good point.
Really, yeah, it has to be intelligently applied.
Right.
I think that's really most important with it. There's a time for it. Like I do my fasted cardio in the morning, which is just 30 minutes of medium intensity, whether it be ride the bike or, get on the arc trainer or, something simple. I don't do the high intensity HIIT training. And then if I play ice hockey, I play ice hockey normally. So I'll play 1 or 2 games a week. And that would be my highest intensity other than my ballistic weight training. But I think what the most important part is for people to understand that glycogen tank, that system that stores glycogen within the muscle and within the liver, it's really important that we empty that thing as much as possible and burn up the existing stores of energy and refill. If it's always full, then what you're going to be taking in over and above is going to be stored as body fat.
Let's move into supplementation to help us get our testosterone levels in our body right. I know I've just started taking the ashwagandha.
Sure.
That actually Anabolic Man recommended. I got the one.
Tester RX, yeah.
Yeah. I really noticed the difference in my mood throughout the day since I started taking it. It's crazy, but ashwagandha is an amazing substance. But let's talk about some of the ones that you would recommend for. I do a lot of high intensity training, or not a lot. I do it once a day.
Right.
But I can tell when I'm done with that workout how my stress levels are higher. The ashwagandha is help lowering that back, bringing that back into check.
Sure. Yeah. The ashwagandha is really regulating the response of the hormonal response. It has some effectiveness on the pituitary gland. So it can work with neurotransmitters. So it's multifaceted, like a balancing, kind of like Vitex is for women, how it manages their progesterone levels. I find that quite interesting. If you look at their formula over there, Anabolic Man, and I love supporting companies that do good work.
Right.
And I don't try and steal business from anybody. I want to promote companies that do excellent work. And they're one of them. I mean, anabolicmen.com, the 2 PhDs that are over there, they have a great business now. But one of the things is they're really both PhDs and they focus on research-backed information. So anything that they say on the website or the YouTube channel is I can always go and read the studies. And a lot of studies are done on rats, and we find every once in a while some reasonable studies that are done on people. And their formula for Tester RX, we'll just go over the ingredients. So magnesium, they use actually magnesium citrate for many reasons. They use it because studies show for spermatogenesis, for elevating testosterone, for blood vessel health, cardiovascular reasons. So that makes sense to have that ingredient. Zinc, they use gluconate, and the zinc gluconate, I could start from immunity to sperm production to elevated testosterone levels, over the overall value of zinc to skin health. You have to have zinc. If somebody is deficient in zinc, 99% of people, in my opinion, will be low in testosterone. Right. You just can't have efficient processing of the mechanism of testosterone elevation or the production of testosterone without zinc. It's not going to happen. They use the KSM 66 ashwagandha, which we talked about. The forscoli root extract, they use that. It's interesting. They found a few studies that actually support testosterone increase. I think it was at 30% or 28%, which is why they have it in there. And inositol they use as part of the B spectrum, and studies do show that it supports that hormonal regulation. So elevation of testosterone has been indicated in a few studies. Glycine, without a doubt, glycine is, I haven't really seen glycine be contraindicated in too many things other than something that is indicative of not being able to metabolize glycine. So definitely supportive of testosterone production anytime you can. It's more so, I would say, looking at an antioxidant spectrum as well. L-theanine, another modulator of neurotransmitters, seems to work similarly as far as modulating amino acids, similar to the way ashwagandha works on the hormone regulation at the pituitary level. Boron citrate, really important. The studies on boron, and this is one that most people, forget or don't see. The studies on boron are really clear about supporting not only spermatogenesis, but the increase in testosterone, and specifically it has some effect on lowering SHBG. So that's a positive in its sense, which if you lower SHBG and you remove some of the bound testosterone to be free testosterone, that's always a good thing. And then the BioPerine, the black pepper they use for the effectiveness, to enhance effectiveness and absorption. So really good product, well researched, don't have any problems with anything they said. I also like Mucuna pruriens. Not the maca root, but the Mucuna pruriens. There's a lot of research over on examine.com. You'll see a lot of studies also on anabolic men. So that's one I would say that be supportive, that I would put in my routine. Yeah, I'm not a fan of saw palmetto. I don't know if you've done any research on it or not.
Yeah, I have. I'm not a fan either.
Yeah, it's going to lower your DHT. And there's a problem with that, because unless you're having excessive androgenic activity, I just think of finasteride. When people are losing their hair and they go on Propecia or finasteride, the forums across the globe are dotted with people that have major, major problems from going on those drugs. And from major depression, dysfunctional hormone axis. One of my clients actually, we were able to have this discussion under doctor's supervision. He actually came off of it. He could not, it still would not bring up his free testosterone levels. And while he did keep a little bit of his hair, it stopped the loss. He was just an absolute mess. He looked terrible. He was on testosterone replacement. We were able to dial in his dosing, control his estrogen levels, and actually he now is, just looks fantastic, feels fantastic. And that's coming off the finasteride. I was really worried that we'd have, problems, with him. But it actually, he was one of the people that it worked out very well for. So I don't support any use of finasteride or Propecia. And if I have a client that's on it, then we're going to address it.
Let's talk about, we missed the THT or DHT part.
Yeah, dihydrotestosterone.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit before we wrap it up.
More androgenic than testosterone, very potent. So think of hair. These drugs, finasteride and Propecia, are designed to enact a mechanistic effect on the 5-alpha reductase. So if you're losing your hair and you go on Propecia, you're actually going to lower DHT as a result. So lowering DHT, then most men are able to keep the hair that's currently on their head, not necessarily reverse it or grow more hair back. And like I said, it's created so many problems. And I am not one in the theory. I'm not of the theory that DHT is that DHT is a problem, because it really makes us men. I mean, it is just more potent than testosterone. And as long as we have a reasonable level and we're not, 100% above the high norm, then I don't see a need to take such drastic steps as going on those medications. And here's another situation. Most men have the highest levels of DHT in their early 20s. When is your hair the thickest?
In your early 20s.
So that tells me there's something else here at play.
Right.
It's not just the DHT. Now, maybe the DHT, over the years, maybe it's insulin, maybe it's chronically elevated insulin. Maybe, they just haven't tied it all together. But I do know that I have seen several success reports of people with certain oils like emu oil. They put them in, they actually increase circulation to the head. I've seen low level light using the red spectrum light, say 650 nanometers up to 850. Like you can buy a Philips bulb on Amazon for $12 or $13. And I've seen people using that light therapy on their thyroid. I've seen them use it on their testicles for sperm enhancement, for infertility.
Right.
It's a big deal. And there's a reason, because it actually works. You're stimulating blood flow, you're increasing nitric oxide formation, you're bringing vital nutrients to that surface. So it makes sense to me, and there's plenty of literature out there. You can go over Jack Cruz's forum too. He's got all kinds of studies. But
isn't there he's down in South Florida, Dr. Richard Gaines.
Oh yeah, for Gaines Wave, yeah.
Gaines Wave.
Yeah, he's, and that's, this, I was just talking to this with somebody today about this because I saw a commercial for it. One of the doctors in my area is now covering it, and has the machine. And basically it's technology. It's acoustic wave technology that they developed in Europe many years ago. It's not a complex machine. It's just shaped like a little pistol, and it puts out acoustic waves at a certain frequency. So they'll numb the penis up, and then they'll go up and down the shaft at 3 or 4 different spots, and then certain areas of the groin. And basically what it's doing is it's a slight damage to those areas, creates stem cell initiation and new vascularity. So now you'll get better blood flow with new vessels. Well, they're charging for this. Like I said, it's like $600 a visit.
Right. It's not cheap.
No, I'm already opposed to a lot of the things in the allopathic system. And I don't want to begrudge anybody a profit, but I just think that this technology is not expensive. I think it's extremely safe. It's non-invasive. And for those poor folks, because it's not covered by insurance, right, that can't afford 6 treatments at $600, that's $3,600.
Right.
I take exception to that. And I'm opposed to it. And I really wish that those things wouldn't be so expensive and readily accessible for the average Joe that's working 2 jobs, supporting a family of 4, and he's so stressed and he just wants to be able to get an erection, right, and he's incapable, but yet the treatment's out there, and it should be available to him. And
it should be available at a cheaper price, because it's not costing them that much.
No, you can buy a machine on Alibaba for about $2,500 to $3,000.
Right.
So he just so patented his own machine. He bought some rights from the manufacturer, was over in China, put his name on it. His name is Dick Gaines. Richard Gaines. So he called it the Gaines Wave, and great. It's a great business model. I certainly don't begrudge him for being a businessman. The doctor flies down, gets trained for an afternoon, and then down to Miami, they get training, and off they go back to their practice. And it's very lucrative. Again, I just think that the fees are just exorbitant. I just don't agree with the pricing.
All right, let's wrap this up. And first of all, you can find Tony at fdnoflorida.com. I will put that in the show notes along with his credentials. Anabolic Man will be in there.
Anabolicmen.com. Yeah, the supplements are on there. The supplements they have, you can look at the research papers. They sell several supplements: cortisol, Sensoril, that'll help with the cortisol modulation, then obviously the testosterone production. And, I'm always open to hear, people's results. I mean, I always read reviews, but if it's somebody, I don't have a client currently taking any of their products, but they're products that I would certainly trust. The only thing I would say that I would add into any protocol, whether it be infertility, whether it be somebody coming off of steroids that just wants their own testosterone production to elevate, is the supplement taurine. So the studies are really clear. You'll get almost a 200% increase in testosterone. Wow. So the dosing on that would be 1,000 milligrams 3 times a day. You can buy the bulk powders on Amazon through one of the bulk outlets. There's no binders or anything else in there. You just take an 1/8 teaspoon 3 times a day, I believe it is.
Okay.
And if you're coming off testosterone, and if you're on somebody and you wanted to see what your normal production would be or what it could be, then we up that to 5,000 milligrams 3 times a day. So 15,000 milligrams.
So if you're on hormone replacement therapy, you up it to 5,000.
If you're on it and you want to restart your own system.
Okay.
So say you want to come off of exogenous testosterone, the recommendation would be 5,000 milligrams 3 times a day. If you're just looking to increase your current testosterone levels that you're currently making and you're not on TRT, then we look at 1,000 milligrams 3 times a day. And if you can't get it 3 times a day, then by all means, take it twice, take 1,500 and 1,500.
Right.
But take it, and hopefully you got blood work. I can do blood work for any of the folks. I get wholesale blood testing through Quest. So anybody that needs just to find their baseline, that's always a great idea. I try and encourage people that, even if I don't make much money on that at all, it's to have a baseline of where you are. Let's figure out a good CBC panel. Let's look at your estrogen levels. Let's look at your detox pathways. Are you detoxing properly? Let's, all the things that if you have them, say when you're 25 and then 35 and then 40, then we've got good data to see where you were and where you're going.
Test, don't guess.
Exactly. Perfect.
All right. One more question before you go, Tony. And I appreciate your time today, especially on this important topic. If you have 1 hour to kill or just chill out, what album or artist would you listen to?
Album or artist? I'll tell you exactly what I do. I listen to podcasts like this.
Okay.
I mean, I want to be. I'm as thirsty for education as anyone, and I'm blessed with the my 30-year career in aviation being over, and I actually have time to actually just keep learning. I don't know what my next step is. Part of my personal development is not to take on more clients and make my life more complex. It's to learn more to provide better service to the clients that I do.
I'm 100% right there with you. If you looked at my coffee table, I have books everywhere on my coffee table.
Sure.
And, especially I really enjoyed prepping for this episode because there's not a whole lot of good information out there for men on testosterone.
Yeah, I agree. And we spend a lot of time, and I'm sure you do as well, with our female clients,
right,
of lowering testosterone.
Right.
So if they're androgen dominant and we have to start changing things up a little bit, we spend time doing that. I just think that not everything's always a pill. Not everything's, those lifestyle factors that you and I were talking about are such big players. I've seen so many things. I've seen thyroids normalize when you fix the gut. I've seen, just these. It doesn't always have to be at the point of where the perceived damage is. Somebody says my thyroid's out. Well, why do you want to fix my gut? Because they do work together. The system does work together.
And that's something that a lot of people don't get, Tony, is that your gut health is so important to your overall health.
I would start, honestly, it's pretty much almost my number one go-to. I mean, all my clients now have to run a stool test.
Right.
So we're going to look at the gut, and that's one of the prerequisites: the Dutch test, the GI map or GIFX, and obviously a CBC and some other blood work. But and organic acids, those are like the 3 that they must do. So that's almost $1,000 in labs.
Right.
But it is what it is. I don't upcharge any of my labs. But if you can address the GI problems and get that functioning properly, and then I would bet that if you have all your baseline labs and you ran those baseline labs again, you'd see drastic improvements.
Oh, 100%.
So, yeah.
So, all right. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you for joining in today with the Rebel Health Coach, Tom Underwood. And be sure to subscribe to the show so you can catch all the episodes. With desire and commitment, you can implement a lifestyle of wellness and fitness. For the support, encouragement, and tools you need to be successful, visit tomunderwood.net.